In this episode, I'm speaking with Venerable Thubten Chodron. She ordained as a Buddhist nun 40 years ago, and since then has been studying, practicing, and teaching Tibetan Buddhism. Seeing the importance and necessity of a monastery for Westerners training in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, she founded and is the abbess of Sravasti Abbey, a Buddhist monastic community in Washington state. She has also published many books on Buddhist philosophy and meditation in multiple languages, and has co-authored a book with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In this conversation, we talk about Venerable Chodron's journey, her teaching method, her view on when one is ready to teach the Dharma, qualities to look for in a teacher, the practical application of rebirth, similarities among Buddhist traditions, her view on Tantric practice, and more. Now, without further ado, Venerable Thubten Chodron. Hello, Venerable Chodron. Welcome to the Innercraft podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I already shared with the listeners a little bit about your background, but we would love to know more about your journey prior to becoming a nun and becoming a Buddhist. I'm wondering what motivated you to do such a thing, especially in those times. I think you were pretty young, in your early 20s, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm wondering, yeah, why you did that.
Okay. Yeah, that's what my parents said too. Like, what are you doing? But yeah. So as a child, I was always very curious, and I was raised Jewish. So although my family was not very religious, so I grew up with some kind of sensitivity to suffering and injustice and so on. So when the Vietnam War came along, and I was in high school during part of it, it really affected me. And so I was wondering a lot, like, what's the purpose of my life? And if, yeah, what's the purpose of my life? I don't, and I was trying to understand the world because people were saying, well, we're fighting this war in order to live in peace. And I said, but that doesn't work. You don't kill each other so you can live peacefully. That's not how you go about it. And, you know, I didn't really resonate so much with the idea of a creator God. And I explored Christianity a bit, but didn't resonate with that either. So I, but I had these questions about the meaning of my life. And is it just to duplicate my parents' life? You go to school, you get married, you have kids, then they grow up and they have kids, and you have your career and you advance in your career, and then you retire and then you die. And is that all there is to life? And is that how I wanted to spend my life? I wasn't, it didn't seem real appealing to me, I really wanted something that was meaningful. And I didn't know what actually would give meaning to my life. So this kind of questioning continued when I went to college, and the exploration. But I think by the time I went to college, I didn't believe in God anymore. It had never resonated. It got to a point where I just couldn't accept that. So during college, I pretty much did what most of the kids did in the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, uh, lived in that culture, asked these questions, didn't receive any really good answers. In talking about the meaning of life, I knew it had something to do with helping others. That part was clear. But what exactly it was, I had no idea. But and then so I started working after college graduation. I went to UCLA. I wound up getting my degree in history, which taught me something about human beings, which was really helpful. Um, but I got a job in an innovative school right after I graduated, and I worked there for a year. And so education really seemed to me to be quite important in terms of making a positive contribution. But after a, a year of working, I quit and went to Europe and traveled around Western Europe, Eastern Europe, which in those days was, not so many people did because the Iron Curtain was still there. And then we went across Africa, North Africa, and wound up going to Israel. And then from Israel went to Turkey and then went overland in India to India. So this was in 1972. Yeah. And we went overland to India. And 72, maybe it was 73. Anyway, around that time. Because I could have gone to graduate school, but I wanted to learn about life from living it, not from studying it in a book. Yeah, so that's why I went overland to India. And what's interesting is the furthest place we got to was a little village in Nepal, which years later, when I met one of my first Dharma teachers, that was the village where he was born. Interesting coincidence. Anyway, when we ran out of money, then went back to the US, and I went back to graduate school in education, and then I was working as a teacher. And that summer, there was, I saw a flyer about a meditation course. I had never meditated before, didn't know what it was about. I lived in LA at that time, so I had gone to maybe 2 or 3 kind of different spiritual groups for one time each, but none of them did anything for me. Anyway, I saw this flyer at a bookstore about a Buddhist course retreat that was taught by 2 lamas. And since I was working as a teacher, didn't have to go to work in the summer. So I decided to go to this course. And it was taught by 2 Tibetan lamas, Lama Thubten Yeshe and Lama Thubten Rinpoche. And their approach was one I really liked, because they started out with, you don't have to believe anything we say. And that was really important to me, because I was so tired by that time of people telling me what the truth was, that I just didn't want anybody forcing me to believe something, and especially threatening me if I didn't believe it, that I was going to hell or who knows what. So they said, you're intelligent people, you listen, you put it into practice. If it helps you, good. If it doesn't, leave it. Yeah, think about it. If it makes sense, good. If it doesn't make sense, leave it. So I like that approach so much. And then when I started listening to the teachings, I found that what they talked about really helped me to make sense of my life. Okay. And in a way that I never expected. Nobody had ever really, for example, explained to me about rebirth and about karma. But when I heard about these in that course, it was like, oh, this makes sense. Why was I born who I was and not born as somebody else? Yeah. And so that approach really made sense to me. And also when I mm, followed the meditations, like the meditations to counteract anger and jealousy and greed and so on, I found that when I contemplated them, they really helped me and they worked. So by the end, when I came back from that course, I wanted to go to Kopan, where they had a monastery in Nepal, because in those days there weren't very many Buddhist centers in the West. So I packed my bags again that autumn, and I went to Kopan, and it's a monastery outside of Kathmandu, and uh, it's quite interesting because I knew very early that I wanted to ordain. Yeah. And what's strange about it is if I was, how old was I? I was 25 when I met the Dharma. If somebody had told me, even like a year or two earlier, that I would be celibate and I would be a nun, I would have told them they were out of their mind. I would never do that.
Mhm.
But life happens often in ways that we didn't expect. So I went to the monastery in the autumn of 75, and I was a layperson at that time, and so there were more teachings, which I attended. So there were teachings and meditation, and as I did more practice, I decided I wanted to ordain.
Mm.
So, and so in terms of your question, why did I become a Buddhist? It was because it made sense, and because when I practiced it, it helped me become a better person
Mhm.
and work with my own disturbing emotions. Why did I become a nun? Because I felt those previous two things were very important and I should devote my life to them. And also, especially at that time, I was really seeing how my ethical conduct was not completely in line. In other words, when politicians lied, that was awful. When they were corrupt, terrible. When I lied, it was to protect people so I didn't hurt their feelings. My lies were okay.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah. So I realized, oh, I'm holding a double standard. This is not so good. I need to, do something about
Mhm.
the state of my mind and about my behavior. So that was another big motivating
Mhm.
factor for me. And I think one of the parts of Buddhism that really spoke very strongly was the idea of bodhicitta,
Mm.
of the aspiration to become a Buddha for the benefit of all living beings, and the way to cultivate the love and compassion that led up to that. Because as a kid, I always heard, love thy neighbor as thyself,
Mhm.
and, all this kind of stuff, and be nice to other people. But when I looked at the adults around me, I didn't see any adults that loved their neighbors as themselves,
Right.
you know? And there was nobody to teach me how to do it because the whole culture is make a name for yourself, be somebody, look out for yourself first. Yeah, and so there was nobody to even teach. Well, how do I get over my anger
Mhm.
and these kinds of things? So when I encountered the Dharma and there were so many teachings about this, that really spoke to my heart, and I knew that I had to change. Yeah. So, and I also knew that if I stayed in the same situation with my career and my social life and everything, that it would be very difficult to really change. Yeah, because I have too much attachment. and I would just follow my attachment everywhere. So that was part of the decision to ordain too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Of
Thank.
course, when I told my parents, that was another story. Woo! You know,
I can imagine. Yeah.
yeah, they weren't very happy.
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
Uh,
thank you so much for sharing all your background. I mean, your that part of your life, at least. Somehow it really resonates with me, what I have been experiencing, I guess, in the last years of my life, even though in different ways. I mean, I was raised in Peru, in Lima, Peru. I was raised
mhm.
Catholic, but also didn't resonate at all with the way the teachings were taught at the time. All of the dogma and you must believe or otherwise you'll be punished, and all of these things. I started to develop
Yeah,
some aversion towards spirituality in general. And
yeah,
some years ago, 6, 7 years ago, after pursuing, let's say, a material life, let's call it that way, I stumbled upon meditation, and also I
uh,
think it started changing me in similar ways, maybe
yeah,
not as deep, but in similar ways that you talk right now. So it's very interesting, and I guess something that I can also see that both our journeys have in common is the question of what's the purpose of my life, and always, and not taking it
mhm.
loosely, right? Always question it and sort of try to shape your activities and your relationships to around that question, and not just do stuff for the sake of doing stuff,
Yeah.
which is very interesting. I'm wondering, at many points you were asking that question and you realized that what you were doing wasn't the purpose, right? Like, let's say, climbing up the corporate ladder or following your parents'
Hmm.
paths or whatever, that wasn't the purpose of your life. So what would you say today is the purpose of your life?
Oh, um, develop bodhicitta, realize emptiness, progress on the path to Buddhahood,
Uh-huh.
and on the way, benefit as many people as I can, however I can,
Right. Yeah.
and
Hmm.
not harm them. So
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, that's
That's the
that's
one.
now the
Hmm.
purpose. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
This is sort of a very specific question, but I think this is something I have still trouble to not believe, but completely give into. It's the idea of rebirth. Maybe it's because I'm still in a early stage of my journey, but I haven't experienced it, maybe in a way as deep as you have. So right now, my understanding of it mostly intellectual. Let's say. I wonder if that changes at some point, and it stops being a belief or something that makes sense, sort of, and it's something that you
Mhm.
can actually, through your own experience, confirm. Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
question.
Okay. Well, I can't remember my previous lives. Okay, so
Hmm.
that kind of confirmation I'm not able to give. What it for me it was the idea of rebirth and especially karma. It made sense of my life. Okay,
Mm.
because if it were just this life and after you died there was nothing, which is basically what I believed in college after I gave up religion,
Hmm.
was if it's just this life and then there's nothing afterwards, then nothing really makes sense at all. Yeah, then it's just, oh, have as much pleasure as you possibly can. And don't worry about hurting anybody else because nothing's going to happen to you unless by accident you get arrested for doing something. But as long as you can work it so that other people don't find out what you're doing, and as long as it's not too bad, then, you just work for your own pleasure and the pleasure of your own family and friends. But that, you know, it didn't seem real meaningful to me.
Mm.
It's like, okay, because we all experience some happiness now, but I just ate a good lunch And that made me feel good. But where's that happiness that I spent an hour ago? I experienced an hour ago. It's not here.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the things we work for in our life and things that we quarrel with other people over, I think we should do this, and you think we should do that, and I think we should do it this way, and you think it should be done that way. All those quarrels, even if I got my way and I thought that made me happy, the pleasure was always very, very short. And it's only my pleasure. And so, me feeling pleasure for a short time because I got what I wanted, how does that, what is meaningful for the world in
Mm-hmm.
terms of that? You know, it's like you eat some chocolate and the chocolate's done, and then, yeah, so, yeah, yeah, you ate some chocolate, it's over, it's done now. And then, you have to just keep something else, that searching for whatever else you think is going to give you pleasure. And in terms of the, helping society, none of that really made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, especially if you die, yeah. And then you die, and okay, and then there's nothing. So when I heard about rebirth and the idea of our actions that we do today, creating the causes for what we experience in the future, that was something that woke me up, because it was like, oh, instead of blaming the world for my problems, I'm the one who creates the principal cause for my problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I don't want those kind of results in the future, I've got to, shape up right now
Mm-hmm.
and correct the way I'm thinking and acting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And also, how karma and rebirth made sense in my life is I had always wondered, why was I born me? Why was I born to this family?
Mm.
Yeah. Why was I born with the interests that I have? And then, especially when I met Buddhism, it's like, why was Buddhism attractive to me? Yeah, I was raised in another religion. Most people stick with the religion they were raised with. How come that never resonated with me, but Buddhism did? What's going on? It's
Mm-hmm.
these kind of questions. But when you talk about karma and seeds and imprints in our mind, then it begins to make sense. Because if you look at so many of us who grew up in any religion but Buddhist, then, uh, how come so many people now coming from different cultures and religions are attracted to the Buddha Dharma? You know, and the only way that I can really explain that is by saying, well, in previous lives, we had some contact with the Dharma. So, what we call the seeds, imprint was made on our mind. And so, then in this life, when we meet certain circumstances, then that imprint ripens, and oh, we meet a teacher, we read a book, whatever it is, and we're interested and we want to learn more, and then we become Buddhist. uh there's nothing in my present life that would account for that happening to me. Yeah, I don't know about you, but for me, I mean, because my parents, when I said I was becoming a Buddhist and I wanted to become a nun, it was like, huh, why would you want to do that? Yeah. And my mother was very clear. In my genealogy, there are no Buddhists, not a one. Okay. So, genealogically, the nature part of it, It's not because of heredity, family background, chromosomes, brain, anything like that, because there's none of that in my background. Then nurture. So that's the nature part. Then the nurture part. Well, I grew up in America. I didn't know any Buddhists. Yeah. I was not exposed to it. I was taught many other different things. So that the nurture part, none of it was leading me to Buddhism. It was all leading me towards another kind of life. But I turned to Buddhism. So why? Yeah, it's not nature, it's not nurture. Yeah. What do you explain it? It must be something in previous lives. And that goes for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all of us. Some kind of contact. I don't know what it was, but some kind of positive contact
Mm-hmm.
so that this life we're interested.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Thanks. Yeah, that's very interesting. It's especially, well, I mean, I can talk more about, I guess, the causes and conditions from actions in this life. This That's very clear to me, and Buddhism and in general, I guess, the spiritual path seems to be great at pointing those things out. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Moving on, I would like to talk a little bit about your teachers, and I guess I'm curious on how you found your teachers, and also maybe
Mm.
advice you would give to practitioners who may want to find a teacher, or maybe who don't know if they need a teacher or not. Yeah, would love to hear your thoughts about
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think having a teacher is very important. I mean, if we need a teacher to learn how to drive and to learn how to type, we certainly need a teacher to deal with our mind, which is a much more complicated thing than driving and typing. Okay. So that's important. And nowadays, one thing that concerns me is that, uh, on one hand, doing Dharma teachings and everything online is wonderful because then so many people who don't have access to a teacher can meet and hear the teachings. On the other hand, I think it's really important to have someone that you know in person. Yeah, that somebody who's not just a figure on the screen. Yeah. So that fact that so much is streamed, then some people say, well, if I watch the teachings at home, I can keep my pajamas on, I can drink a cup of coffee, I can put my feet up on the table. When the teaching is boring, I can get up and walk and get a snack. If I'm at a Dharma center or if I go to a monastery, I can't act like that. So it's just nicer at home. Yeah. Uh, and I don't think they really get the benefit from the Dharma because there's something very special that happens when you're with a living person in real time and with a community. Other people there who are also learning and questioning in the same way you are. Okay. Uh, Now, in terms of me, how I met my teachers, first of all, when I met the Dharma, when I saw this flyer about a meditation course, I knew nothing. I didn't know that Buddhism and Hinduism, what the difference was between them. I didn't know the types of Buddhism or the types of Tibetan Buddhism. I didn't know anything. Okay. Um, but what I did know after this first course, which lasted 3 weeks, was that what these people said made sense. Yeah. I didn't know the categories. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was that what they said made sense and it helped me. And so I just kept going back. I went back to the same teachers again and again and again. I never went and said, "Will you be my teacher? Can I be your student?" I didn't even know you did that. I just kept showing up. And so I think I was actually quite fortunate because aside for the two or three one talk things I had done before I met the Dharma, uh, the first teachers I met became my teachers. And, I never went around to other groups, other teachers, or anything. Nowadays, most people are, they're like, because there's a lot you can choose from now. Yeah. I had no, uh, it wasn't that I wasn't dissatisfied. I didn't want to even look for anything else because I just knew this helped me. But now it's like, oh, people go here and they go there and they go here and they go there. And then you get together with your friends and you all talk about, this teacher and this one's far out and that one's far out. And this is what the community is like and blah, 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 blah. And inside you have your own consumer checklist, you know. Yeah, okay. Oh, well, this teacher has a sense of humor. That's a point in there. But their Dharma center charges a lot, and I can't afford that. That's a negative thing. Um, and we have our own little checklist of what we like and what we don't. And so you hear something at one teaching. You go to one teacher and you hear one talk, and they're talking about the disadvantages of anger, and you get really mad. Like, why are they talking about the disadvantages of anger? I think anger is good. And I have a problem with anger, but it's not a problem because it gives me energy to counteract social injustice, you know. So, you hear one teaching that you don't like or you don't understand so well, and it's like pooey, and you go on to the next one. Okay. Oh, this one is Dzogchen. They tell me that is the highest teaching. Well, I am a very special spiritual seeker, so I want to go directly to the highest teaching. Of course, other groups say that isn't the highest teaching, but this Lama is very charismatic, you know? And so I want to go, and because I'm also quite a distinguished Dharma student, yeah. So I'll go listen to them for a while, and then you hear them about Dzogchen, and then you say, well, that's nice, but what about Theravada Buddhism? Yeah. When I was at the Dzogchen course, I met somebody who was studying with Achan so and so in Thailand. I should go try that one too. Yeah. And so it's like in America, we have this ice cream shop called 31 Flavors. Okay. So it's like going to 31 flavors. You taste a little bit of everything. Yeah. And then, some people say, "Oh, well, I'll take some of this, I'll take some of that, and I don't have to even leave it all Buddhism. I like this part in Hinduism, and I'll take a little Sufism and a little bit about crystals, and something about herbal medicine, and something about, all this mystical stuff, and I'll put it all together, and that's my spiritual path." Yeah. And Lama Yeshe used to say, "You're making soup." Like you're taking potatoes and celery and carrots and putting it all in one pot. Yeah. And, from a Buddhist viewpoint, you are free to go wherever you want, study whatever you want. But if you really want to make practice, you have to, you know, You have to commit. And it's not even that you have to commit. You just, like happened to me, it's like, this is what makes sense. So I'm just going with it. Nobody made me commit. Nobody said, oh, you have to commit, and who's your teacher, and what's your tradition. It was just like, yeah, I'm going back. And then my teachers, I studied with them. Then they also uh, told me to go study with their teachers and with some of their Dharma friends who were also Dharma teachers. So, on the basis of these initial teachers, then I met some other teachers too that I studied with. And and I was incredibly fortunate because my teachers were all really good teachers. They were ethical human beings, and they knew the teachings well, and they had practiced them and had personal experience.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they were very kind and compassionate.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I never did the window shopping and
Yeah.
that stuff.
Oh,
I
that's
was just
that's
lucky.
that's great. Yeah, I think that's being lucky for sure. Especially, well, I
Yeah.
mean, nowadays, as you mentioned, we have so many teachers out there. It's hard also if you're a beginner and you don't really know what you are filtering with. But
Yeah.
there are some teachers out there that may not be where they think they are, or may not know how to teach even that well.
Mhm.
So there's some filtration needed at that point. And then this is one more potential filtering, but some people may not be ready to listen to certain teacher in the way they speak for the personality patterns or preferences or whatever is there. So I
Mhm.
mean, I would think it's valid to go to another teacher and maybe go back when you are ready
Yeah.
or something like that. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's well. I'm really glad that you were lucky to have great
Yeah.
teachers in
Yeah.
your path.
Yeah, I was very lucky. So I'm not saying that everybody needs to stick with the first teacher they
Hmm.
have. Because, like you say, sometimes you go to different teachers or groups, and it's like, this does not feel right.
Mm.
Yeah, because you meet the people in the group, and if I become a student of this teacher, I'm going to become like those people.
Mm.
uh, they're not actually my role models, you know.
Right, right.
So, sometimes if you don't meet a teacher whose teachings really touch your heart,
Mm.
or a group that you feel comfortable in, then you have to, go to another teacher, another group, and whatever. So I'm not knocking that. For some people, it's really important, and it's necessary.
Hmm.
Some people find a very good teacher, but then they build on that and
Hmm.
they find another good teacher too. They
Right.
don't abandon the first one, they just add on the second, third, and however many.
That's interesting. Yeah. So there's no need
Okay.
to commit to only one, right?
No,
Hmm.
no, you usually have what's called a root teacher, who is often the one who first really touched your heart.
Mm.
It's often that person, but it doesn't have to be.
Hmm.
Yeah, because sometimes it's somebody that you meet a little bit later who, yeah, the way they teach or how they teach or what they teach, something you goes into your heart in a way that it doesn't with other people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But then on top of that, you can still have other teachers.
Hmm.
Uh, Okay, and I should mention that the Mahayana scriptures and the Theravada scriptures too, they talk about the qualities to look for in a teacher, and so I think that's important for people to learn. Like, what are the qualities of a reliable teacher who can guide you? Because we come from a culture where everybody falls in love with sports stars and movie stars. Yeah. And so then, if, and in our culture, people become groupies. So then if we come from that culture and we don't know what kind of qualities a good spiritual mentor should have, then we just look, oh, who's the best looking, who jokes, yeah, who has the most students following after them, who is the most charismatic, and we make our own criteria and none of those are the criteria that the masters say to look for. None of them is a teacher who's charismatic, who makes you laugh, who is an entertainer, and by the side has sex with their students. No, we have to use our wisdom
Right.
around this kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It's, as I mentioned, it seems like it's especially hard for beginners who are starting to discover their own wisdom, but at a very early stage. So there's a, you know,
Yeah.
I still don't know the answer or like the advice, but I think looking up for the qualities that are in scriptures, I think that's probably a good way to start,
Mm,
for sure.
yeah.
So we've been talking about your teachers and getting a teacher for a while. I'm wondering at what point you sort of bridge the path from student to teacher. I know that you started Sravasti Abbey a while
Yeah.
ago.
Hmm.
So I have two questions, I think. First, I'm wondering what was your motivation and your vision for Sravasti Abbey, and
Hmm.
also how you transition into this teacher role.
Okay. Um, well, first of all, I didn't bridge from student to teacher, okay? Because the way I think is until you reach full awakening, you are a student. No matter how high you are on the path, you're always a student until your realization is that of a fully awakened being. Okay. So I think that's quite important. So for me, I feel like uh, I never aspired to be a teacher, and I mean I was a teacher in lay life. I taught little kids, but I never aspired to be a Buddhist teacher. And I get concerned sometimes when there are people who are very, very beginning who say, "Oh, I want to learn Buddhism so I can become a teacher." Oh, wait a minute. You don't want to learn Buddhism as a student so that you can develop a heart of loving kindness towards others? You're not looking to subdue your anger and your attachment. You're seeing Buddhism as a career choice where you can become a teacher and then you have a job and a title. That kind of thing, I do not recommend. Okay, my own experience with it is, like I said, I didn't have any idea that I would be in that role. My teacher, one time, early on, they had a month long course every November, and they would always have one of the students be there as an assistant who led meditations and gave some talks and things like that. They were the teachers of the course.
Mhm.
So one year I was asked to do that. And I went to my teacher and I said, I'm a beginner. I can't be in that position and help in the course in that way. And my teacher looked at me and he said, "You're selfish." Okay, Lama, what do you want me to do? you know? uh, he said, "You don't have to be an expert. Just what you do know, you share with other people. That's all." Yeah. So, you know, And then, so like time went on, life went on. And then I was in a Dharma center in Italy, and one of the speakers got ill and couldn't give the seminar over the weekend. So they asked me to do it. Uh, what? You want me to teach the seminar with all these people? Well, yes, you're the one who's been ordained the longest. I've only been ordained a year and a half or 2 years. I don't know anything. Well, you'll learn. Go do it. So, okay, that was the first time I started giving talks. And so then people started asking, and because of what my teacher said, I would accept when I could. And for many years, I just didn't. I was like, why am I? I have no qualifications. Why am I doing this, giving Dharma talks? These people should listen to my teachers, not to me. But every time I went to my teachers and said, I want to do long retreat so that I can really get some more experience of the Dharma, uh, all of my teachers, whoever I asked, would look and they would say, oh, that's nice. You want to go on retreat. Go teach. They all told me to teach. Okay. I don't want to, but you trust your teachers. So, okay. So for a long time, I spent just like, why am I doing this? I don't understand. And it took me many years to really see how being in the role of a teacher, not being a teacher, being in the role of a teacher, how it helped my own Dharma practice and how it made me grow up in some very important ways. And it also taught me that I could do something that was beneficial to others. I'm teaching the Buddha's teachings, but that benefits people. So, it's like, oh, I need to give myself some credit for that. Yeah. And so after that, then I began to feel more comfortable in
Mm-hmm.
that role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But still, I'm basically a student.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That's great to hear. It seems that one for people who want to teach, one of the most important things is that the motivation comes from the sense of bodhicitta more than the sense of me teaching others, right?
yep.
Hmm.
Yep.
But I've thought about it sometimes, but then I also think the same thing that you thought that, which is, I mean, the teachers, let's say my teachers, do a much better job and can help others in much better ways than I could. I'm
Mm-hmm.
let's say just starting, so why would I? Um,
Yeah.
but
That's what I was asking myself too.
mhm,
Yeah. But but maybe there's some kind of karma connection we don't know. So we go and we just do what we can and see what happens. Yeah. The what's very interesting though is when you first learn Buddhism, usually we're not so proud because we don't know anything. Yeah. We don't know what Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are. We don't know what karma is. We don't know anything. So we're not proud at that stage. Okay. It's when we have studied and practiced for a few years. Yeah. Then we start thinking, oh, well, I've been to many courses, I've done many retreats. And that's when pride can come. And that point is where you have to be very careful. Yeah. Because if it's motivated by pride, if it's motivated by seeking other people, wanting other people to appreciate you, wanting them to praise you, wanting to be well known. Yeah. These kind of worldly motivations very easily creep in.
Yeah,
So we have to be very, very careful.
that makes sense. That's great advice. Thank you. And then moving on to Sravasti Abbey, how did you decide to found it, and
Oh,
what was your idea at that point?
woo. Well, when I ordained, there weren't really any monasteries where Westerners could live. We stayed at Kopan. It was a monastery for the young Sherpa boys. Um, but, we had visa problems and all of that. So for many years, I mean, my life was just kind of go from this place to that place. My teacher always directed it, or my teacher would send me to one Dharma center or another to work. And so I would study with whichever teacher was there. Uh, so I was, moving around a lot under my teacher's guidance. Um, I had very little money, you know, I mean, extremely little money, like being in India, not having enough to get back to the West. Uh, so I had problems with that. Then we had so many visa problems. Yeah, in Asia, constant visa problems. So in 1982, one of my teachers started a monastery in France. And so I went there. And I really loved living with other monastics like that. But again, we all got transferred out to go to other places. But I felt, and it was really difficult in the early years between not having money, not getting sick in Asia, language problems, not having a stable place to live. Some people had money from their family or whatever. Some of us didn't have anything. So it was very difficult. So I always had the feeling like, wait a minute, that this isn't the way ordained people should live. I mean, the Buddha set it up as a community, and the Tibetans are supported more or less by the monasteries they're in, and yet we Westerners are floating around. And when you float around like that, you can't really stay in one place and study deeply and, have a consistent practice. So those initial years where I was like traveling a lot, I look back and I think they were very helpful to me. But I also saw many people disrobe because you're just moving around, you don't have a base, and you don't have any money, and you have to pay for your own food, and what do you do? And so that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I really wanted to set up a place where monastics could stay and know they had a home where they didn't have to pay, and also where they could receive teachings and practice, and where a monastery could be um, kind of a beacon for society, because it makes people think. Yeah, if you a monastery and people live a simple life, people start thinking, they don't have a lot of stuff, but they're happy. How come I think I need all this stuff? Okay, so there's many ways I think where uh, being monastic life in monasteries really contribute to society and to the benefit of individuals in society. Uh, but I didn't initially kind of think that I could do it. Thought I had to have permission from my teacher. Anyway, I didn't have any money. So, how is this going to happen? I don't like fundraising. I think fundraising warps the mind. So I did not want to do that. Um, but very much, I had this feeling like if Buddhism is going to spread in the West, we need monasteries and we need people who ordain as monastics. And monastics have to live a different lifestyle. You can't go to work every day in a regular job and keep your precepts. Yeah, it just doesn't work. So, um, yeah, so I wanted to do it for many years, but the it took a while for the causes and conditions to come together. Yeah. Uh, but when they did, then I thought, okay, well, let's try. And that's how the Abbey was started.
That's amazing. Really inspiring. I really want to visit soon. It's in Washington, right
Yeah.
in Washington State. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get here very easily.
So yeah, well, I do. Yeah, I'm pretty close. I will definitely go there soon. How does a day in the monastery looks like? More or less, roughly.
Okay. Um, we start with morning meditation at 5:30. People get up 4:30, 5, 4 o'clock, whenever they want to. But morning meditation starts at 5:30. Breakfast is at 7:30. Then we have a short meeting so that people, whatever projects we're going to work on that day, we let other people know, and also announcements are made, and if things need to be worked out, we figure them out. So that usually goes from like 8:15 to 8:30, 8:45. And then we have what is called offering service, which other people call work. But we call it offering service because it changes your mind when you think, I am offering my service to sentient beings, to the monastics. That's totally different than our association with work. Okay. So we offer service until lunchtime. We have lunch at 12:30. We have a short Dharma talk before lunch. And of course, with breakfast and lunch, we do chanting and everything before we eat. After lunch, we usually so lunch is at 12:30, and then we have a 15-minute talk till 12:45 about. Uh, then what offering service starts again at 2:30. We usually go until 4 o'clock, and then at 4 o'clock there's a study period. So from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, then people can study. Uh, 6 o'clock there's medicine meals. Some people eat in the evening, some people don't. And then at 7 o'clock, evening meditation. That goes to about 8:15. So that's the basic thing. But uh, Tuesday and Thursday morning, we also have teachings. Friday night, we have teachings. Up until recently, we were having teachings on Saturday morning. We also have teachings in the late afternoon on Tuesday, and then we'll have weekend courses. So the basic schedule has a lot of alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds great. And is it mostly geared towards monastics, or can lay practitioners also go for a period of time?
Mm. It's a monastery. Where we live is a monastery, but we invite lay practitioners. Yeah. So we have some courses and some retreats. And so people just write, they fill out an application, and then, we usually accept it, and then they can come. Some people want to come for a visit when we're not having a course or a retreat, and just take part in community life with us. So people can come and do that. So we have lay guests a lot, until COVID. Now people are starting to come back. We're opening again a bit.
I see. And
Mhm.
what's your main method of teaching? I know, well, I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your lineage was mainly around the Gelug lineage or Gelug
Mhm.
lineage. But I'm wondering if you teach strictly from that, or you sort of have made your own soup in order to teach, or something like that.
I try not to make soup. Okay. Um, yeah, because what I studied, I just kept going back to the same teachers. And J. Tsongkhapa's view really made sense to me, It wasn't at the beginning, oh, I'm going to go study J. Tsongkhapa. It was like, okay, you're teaching something, I'll listen. And then later on, I found out, oh, this is, from this lineage. Um, but if I find something in the other Tibetan lineages that I find is really good, I mean, I've taught the four thoughts that change the mind, you know, and these kinds of things. Uh, because actually most of the foundation practices, which are not just foundation, they're quite when you get into them, there's a lot there. Um, they're pretty similar in the four Tibetan traditions. It's when you come to Tantra that there's different lineages. So much in lineages coming from India, yeah. But in the Sutrayana teachings, they're very, very similar. So yeah, I'm fine with that. What is interesting though is we have a very strong, well, not very strong, a strong affiliation with Chinese Buddhism in the sense that in the Tibetan tradition, they, for monastics, they have the lineage for fully ordained monks, for the monks to become fully ordained. But they only have the lineage for novice nuns. They don't have the lineage for fully ordained nuns. But we want to become fully ordained because it's very beneficial for your practice and for how you can benefit society. So we go to Taiwan because they have the lineage in Chinese culture and Vietnamese and Korean as well, the lineage to be able to give the full ordination for women. So, in terms of the Vinaya uh, part of our practice, we rely on the Chinese tradition. They follow the Dharma Guptaka Vinaya, whereas the Tibetans follow the Mulashavastivada Vinaya. So, but our practice tradition is Tibetan. Our Vinaya tradition is Dharmagupta. And there's been no difficulty or problem with it at all. Yeah. We invite Tibetan geshes to come here and teach. And also, there's Chinese nuns and monks who could come.
Hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about those traditions, but I'm curious about what sort of the main categories of practice of the traditions are. Also, from a practitioner point of view, how does the path looks like? First you start, for example, right, in Theravada Buddhism, usually you start with some samatha and then you do some vipassana.
Hmm.
Right? Is there some similarity?
Yeah, okay. Well, actually, if you learn the traditions well, you see that they all come from the Buddha, and that you find many of the same, I mean, almost all of the same teachings in all these traditions, but how they're taught or what the emphasis is can be different. Okay. So, for example, in Tibetan tradition, uh, yeah, we have teachings on and we practice shamatha and vipassana. Many people don't know that. They think, oh, vipassana is this Buddhist tradition from Southeast Asia. Actually, Vipassana is not a Buddhist tradition. It's an approach to it's insight meditation. It's the meditation to see the nature of reality. So all the Buddhist traditions have that in one form or another. All of them have teachings on shamatha. Yeah, because these practices are ones that everybody does. Um, there's teachings on love and compassion in all of the traditions, although the bodhicitta is taught in the Mahayana traditions. Okay, but if you look, the Buddha taught the three higher trainings of ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom. These are found in all the Buddhist traditions. Again, sometimes they're taught in different ways, but the main elements are there. There's a book that His Holiness the Dalai Lama and I did together. It's called Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions. And it will really help you understand this because uh, you when you learn like that, you see that, oh, you start with the four immeasurables in one tradition, and then in the next tradition is bodhicitta.
Mm,
So that tradition is based on this one.
right.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's not like they're worlds apart. They're
Hmm.
very, very close.
What would you say are the unique elements of Tibetan Buddhism then?
I would say that the emphasis on tantra is unique. They have tantra, the Shinto, no, Shingon religion, a Shingon tradition in Japan is tantric. There's centuries ago there was tantra in China, not so much now, although now people are interested in that. I would say also um, how the the Tibetans talk about the development of bodhicitta. How this is in the Chinese tradition for sure, but it's explained in a different way. So the explanation in the Tibetan tradition, I think, is yeah, quite is very well developed. That um, the way emptiness is explained, in many ways very similar to the other Buddhist traditions, but in some ways different. Uh, the Tibetans rely mostly on the Madhyamaka view. So that viewpoint is also found in China. It's maybe not as widespread there, but it has existed for centuries in Chinese Buddhism. Um, yeah. So yeah, when people ask me about the differences, it always feels strange because I think we should talk about the similarities between traditions.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you won't like the next question then, but this is the first difference that you mentioned, which is Tantra or Vajrayana, right? Again, I don't know much about that. I know a little bit, but would love to know more about it from yourself. What is Tantra? And what's its role in the path? I mean, I'm also thinking that if most or all Buddhist traditions they aim to the same thing, right? To the same, let's say, to our true
Mm.
nature. Why is the need for tantric practice? Or, well, yeah, what's the need for tantric practice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, uh, I would say that Tantra has a very unique way of developing shamatha vipassana. So, it's a unique way. Yeah. Just like Chan and Tian Tai, and they all have their unique ways. Um, I could tell you the elements of Tantra, but I personally think that people need a very good basis for Sutrayana, uh, and should not just jump into Tantra right away.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
why is that?
Mm, in Tantra, you receive, well, first of all, you receive many more precepts to keep. Yeah. And so, in terms of keeping precepts, we should go slowly. First, you take the 5 precepts, get your life together, not to kill and steal and sleep around and lie and take intoxicants, which sounds easy, but many people can't do it, you know? And then, so you take precepts gradually. The tantric precepts are the most difficult to keep.
Which
Yeah.
are
So
those?
don't, which it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's not important.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And so, yeah. So you build your practice in a gradual, very organic way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question about the topic, I promise. Let's say
Okay.
you are practicing in a different tradition that doesn't have a tantric path,
Oh, that's
and your
fine. No
practice
problem.
is going well, right? It's advancing,
Yeah.
all right.
Fine.
No need.
Fine.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you say need, what do you mean by need?
No.
Like you need it to become enlightened, but when you're, gazillion miles away from enlightenment, do you need what people practice on the last step of enlightenment? If you're going from here to New York, yeah, what do you need more? The ride, to know how to get from Seattle to Spokane to Missoula. You need to learn I-90. Are you ready to learn the bridges in New York yet? Yeah, or in Chicago? I mean, no, you need to focus on where you're at right now. Yeah, because if you don't focus where you're at and you're learning all the bridges in New York,
Right.
is that going to help you right now with your ignorance, anger, and attachment?
Probably not.
No, you
Hmm.
might get really puffed up. Oh, I know all the bridges in New York. Yeah, do you know them? Oh, you don't, poor thing. Okay, when you're in Pennsylvania, okay,
Hmm.
then maybe you can start thinking more about the bridges in New York.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
I hear
Or
you.
if yeah, or even now you can study the bridges in New York and the highways in New York, but are you going to drive them right now? No, you're here.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're driving on 990,
Hmm.
going east.
Hmm.
And you're just trying to get to Issaquah first.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Hmm. So, on the topic of this lifetime journey, right? Such an amazing but also complex journey. Um, I'm wondering, I mean, you're a monastic who have been training for a while and devoting your life to this question, early on, you said you still are a student, right? Are there any hopes for lay practitioners to get to the end of the path?
I think it depends so much on the individual. I can't make a generalization about everybody because everybody's coming in with different karma, with different dispositions, with different capabilities. I can't make a general statement. It's said in the scriptures that lay people can attain awakening. So that's good. Yeah. Yeah. Now, the question really is, are any of us going to attain awakening in this lifetime? Yeah. And they say you motivate for it, but don't expect it. Yeah, because for me anyway, the more I study, the more I practice, the more I realize I don't know anything. Yeah. So it's going to take a while to become enlightened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what I'm happy about is that I met the path.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. What would be a piece of advice that you give to lay practitioners listening to this?
To lay practitioners listening to this, study, put it into practice, look deeply at the way your own mind functions and apply the Dharma teachings to that so that you can begin to subdue the ignorance, anger, and attachment. Don't harm others. Benefit them as much as you can. Yeah. Learn about bodhicitta and do those meditations, as well as learn about emptiness and do those meditations. And relax. Relax does not mean indulge your sense pleasures. It means enjoy your practice.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say, I've got to be awakened by Tuesday. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Venerable.
Okay.
So this has been a wonderful talk. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Andres. So,
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.